Hello all people, welcome back to this video series about abdomen anatomy, and we have already seen the anterior abdominal wall surface landmarks, the muscles, the superficial fascia, and in today's video we'll be talking about rectus sheath, and we'll also see a 3D video of the sheath, and at the end we'll also be talking about the clinical cases and important clinical aspects of the sheath. So, what is rectus sheath? Every muscle has a sheath enclosing it, mostly all of the muscle in the human body. Similarly, the rectus abdominis muscle is covered is called as rectus sheath. The sheath is basically formed by the aponeurosis of the flat muscles, which include the external oblique, internal oblique, and transverse abdominis. The major function of this sheath include maintaining the strength of the anterior abdominal wall and protecting the muscle, preventing its bowing of the muscle during its contraction, and thereby increasing its efficiency. So, what are the features of this rectus sheath? This sheath presents anterior wall and posterior wall, and the anterior wall is complete. As you can see, it starts from here and extends throughout the muscle, so it is complete. But the posterior wall is incomplete because you can see the posterior wall only here, the middle portion, and superiorly it is deficient, and inferiorly it is deficient below the arcuate line. So the posterior wall is incomplete and it is deficient above and below. And above it is attached to the costal margin of 7, 8, 9 costal cartilages, and it lies directly on 5th, 6th, 7th costal cartilage. And below the arcuate line, it lies directly on fascia transversalis, as you can see here. So, talking about the formation of the sheath, let's just quickly watch how it looks. So the superficial layer is the external oblique muscle, and this is the internal oblique muscle. And what you see in between them is the rectus abdominis muscle, and this is covered by the rectus sheath. As we have said, this is the internal oblique, this is the external oblique. The one sandwiched between them is the rectus abdominis. So when we removed these two muscles, we can see the rectus abdominis muscle. Only that the sheath is not visible, but because the sheath is very close to the muscle, but this is the muscle, and we can see that above the level of costal margin. So this is the costal margin level, and above the level of costal margin, the posterior wall, which is deep, it lies directly on 5, 6, 7 costal cartilages, which is clearly visible here. And the anterior wall is formed by external oblique. We removed that layer before. So as I said, the anterior wall was formed by the external oblique aponeurosis, and the posterior wall is deficient superiorly at the level of above the level of costal margin. So between the costal margin and the arcuate line, the anterior wall is formed by the external oblique again, but with the anterior lamina of internal oblique aponeurosis, and the posterior wall is formed by the posterior lamina of internal oblique aponeurosis with the transverse abdominis muscle. And below, anterior wall is formed by all the three aponeurosis, and posterior wall is deficient, lies on fascia transversalis, as we have seen in the last slide. To understand it more clearly, so this is at the level of costal margin. We can see that the muscle directly lies on the ribs, costal margin of the ribs, whereas the anterior wall is formed by the external oblique aponeurosis. And between the level of costal margin and arcuate line, we can see that so this superficial muscle is external oblique, this is internal oblique, and this is transverse abdominis. And so the anterior wall is formed by the external oblique aponeurosis along with the internal oblique aponeurosis anterior lamina. So here we can see that the internal oblique aponeurosis splits into two lamina, whereas the external oblique, both the lamina of external oblique together forms the anterior wall along with the anterior lamina of internal oblique, and the posterior wall is similarly formed by the posterior lamina of the internal oblique along with the two laminas of transverse abdominis muscle. So this is between the level of costal margin and arcuate line, and below the arcuate line we can see that the anterior wall is formed by the aponeurosis of all the three flat muscles, which is the external oblique, the internal oblique, and the transverse abdominis. And posteriorly, we don't see a sheath. It lies directly on fascia transversalis, the brown color thing. So, talking about the contents of the rectus sheath, we have two arteries, superior and inferior epigastric arteries, and we have two muscles, which is the rectus abdominis majorly and parimedalis if it is present. And we have two veins, which are superior epigastric and inferior epigastric vein accompanying the arteries, and we also have 6 nerves. They are the lower 6 thoracic nerves. And so the superior epigastric artery, this is a branch of internal thoracic artery, and the inferior epigastric artery, this is the branch of external iliac artery. The superior epigastric artery, it enters through the gap between the costal margin and xiphoid process, and the inferior epigastric artery, it enters the sheath by passing in front of the arcuate line, as you can see here. So these anastomose with each other within the sheath, and they supply the rectus abdominis muscle. And the vein, which is not seen in the picture, they accompany the artery, and the superior epigastric vein drain into internal thoracic vein. Similarly, the inferior epigastric vein drain into the external iliac vein. We have finally the intercostal nerves T7, T8, T9, T10, T11, and the subcostal nerve T12. They pass from the intercostal spaces into the abdominal wall. And they run in the neurovascular plane, which is between the internal oblique and transverse abdominis muscle. So the plane between the internal oblique and transverse abdominis muscle is the neurovascular plane, and they enter the rectus sheath by piercing it, and then within the sheath they proceed forward deep into the rectus muscle, and to about its midline they enter the muscle, supply it, and emerge through the anterior wall of the sheath as the anterior cutaneous nerves, as you can see here. So the clinical case which is related with the topic today, a 55-year-old elderly multiparous woman. Multiparous means she has given birth to more than one children. So that woman is admitted to the hospital with the complaints that every time she coughs, she sees a protrusion in the upper part of the abdomen, as the words of the patient, which is the epigastric region. So what would be the probable diagnosis? As you can see, the upper part of the abdomen majorly contains of rectus abdominis muscle, and we have also seen that rectus abdominis muscle is the muscle which is very important for the flexion of the trunk, and also it protects the bowing of the muscle. So it should be related to the muscle, and they say that every time she coughs, she sees a protrusion. So that is basically a hernia. So a protrusion happens when the muscle is weak and the intestinal contents or sometimes fat, they protrude outside because of increased intra-abdominal pressure. So the diagnosis is epigastric hernia, and what she feels is the protrusion of fat. In multiparous women, the linea alba, which is a midline fibrous raphe formed by the interlacing of the aponeurotic fibers of the three paired flat muscles on the anterior abdominal wall, becomes weak, And also it happens in chronically ill children, since in the question they have told us that she was a multiparous woman, she has given birth to two children. So she comes in this category. And also every time the intra-abdominal pressure is excessively raised, as in coughing, a small amount of extra peritoneal fat may protrude through the upper part of linea alba, and eventually it may drag it behind it a small peritoneal sac, and it could contain a portion of greater omentum. So this is the epigastric hernia. We'll about omentum and all that stuff we'll talk about in the upcoming videos, but you have to know that every time the muscle is weakened, which happens in chronically ill children, also in multiparous women, because of the expanding of the abdominal wall and shrinkage, so it becomes weak. And every time the internal abdominal pressure is increased excessively, that could be epigastric hernia. And also other important aspects is the usage of rectus abdominis muscle for the reconstructive surgery of breast. As you've seen in this picture, the pedicle flap of the upper part of rectus abdominis muscle, along with the artery, of course superior epigastric artery, is taken and it is used. So you can see here. So here, but they have taken the lower flap. It is taken along with the artery. Lower part of the rectus abdominis muscle is supplied with the inferior epigastric vessel. So along with that, it is taken. It is used for the reconstructive surgery of the breast. And the hematoma of rectus sheath. So hematoma is basically the collection of blood. So what happens is when the superior and inferior epigastric artery supplying the rectus abdominis muscle, when they are unduly stretched during such as a severe bout of coughing or in late months of pregnancy, so they could get ruptured, and this would lead to the formation of hematoma. Of course, when they are ruptured, there is accumulation of blood in the sheath. So that is called as hematoma of rectus sheath, as you can see in this picture. So this is the umbilicus, and here is the hematoma. The normal clinical presentation would be the midline abdominal plane and the tender mass which is confined to one rectus sheath.